Right then, so what we're talking about this afternoon are just some of the basic building blocks of React. If you're not aware yet, the official website for React is reactjs.org, so I can give you a link to that later, and there's some really useful stuff on there as well, so it might be worth familiarizing yourself with it. I think we've covered what React is, right, on Monday. So what is it? Framework, library, tool, utility, what sort of thing? Ooh, framework or library? Technically just a library, right? React's technically just a library. No, React's library. Yeah, React's library. Yeah. So it's just responsible for the view, right? The V in the MVC. It's just responsible for the view, yeah, for building user interfaces, for building good UIs, things like that. Yeah, something like Angular would be a full-on framework.
Sorry, Graham.
Yep.
I don't think this is actually streaming YouTube live.
Not streaming yet? Anyone else got the stream?
It's youtube.com/Kadura, right? Just go to YouTube.
Has anyone else got the stream? Yeah, other people have got the stream here, right? Yeah, so it must just be your address, Ed. Yeah, so youtube.com/Kadiri/live. Just refresh the browser, perhaps. It might work. But people in the room have got the stream, so it should be working. If not, you can see my screen anyway, right? Through the Meetup link, through the Meet link.
Yeah, it's working now.
Yeah, okay, cool. Either way. Nice one. Yeah, so React's a very, very popular tool, right? That's why we're teaching you it. You might often hear as well the term component-based. React is component-based. So component-based library. Anyone, any ideas what that means?
Component is a piece of code that you can reuse it.
Yeah, so a component is essentially just a file in the case of React, right? Or it's part of that file, and it's a reusable section of code, yeah? And why do we prefer that approach to designing software nowadays? It's become very, very popular, component-based design.
It's easier to update or
Yeah.
continue.
Exactly. Easier to update, easier to maintain, cuts down on this 90% of the time that we said that a lot of companies just spend debugging and fixing old code. If you've got component-based architecture and component-based libraries, then hopefully you can pinpoint where that problem lies a little bit easier, and rather than trawling through thousands and thousands of lines of code, at least you know it's contained within that component and within those 50 lines or something like that. So as soon as you find your components getting quite large, or your files, if you like, in this case, getting quite large and hard to read, hard to understand, that then might be the case to create a brand new component. And you will certainly be doing this a lot throughout this course, yeah? I'm going to jump into a CodeFlix app now that's a little bit further along than where you guys currently are. But that's okay. We can just see the structure of it, and we can play around and look at two different types of components and see some JSX in action and just understand what it's doing a little bit better under the hood. Yeah. So here's one I tried to open earlier and then I had to reboot, but we've got it back up again. And essentially, this structure on the left-hand side should look fairly similar to you, right? When you run the Create React app, it creates for you your source folder, your public folder, and all things like that. Inside the source is currently where you've been editing. This has obviously got a few more folders in here. We've got a front end and a back end. Yeah, we're just creating some structure to our code. But you've mainly been working here inside your app file, yeah, your app.js. Is app a component in this case, in React's terminology? Would you call app a component?
I think that's incorrect because it works in all code with one.
Exactly, yeah. App in the React terminology is a component. I've also got a details component.
We still up here?
Oh, sorry, you're not streaming in the room. Yeah, apologies for that. Again, it's because I rebooted, right, and I forgot to share it to the screen. Won't be a second. Where are we? So why is it not picking that up?
So I can see from different languages.
Just turn it off and turn it on again, right? The usual thing. Thanks for speaking up, Ahmed. Hopefully it should now just pop up. If it doesn't. Yeah, if not, we might just have to use YouTube if you're happy with that.
The only thing is when you're on YouTube, the only thing is when you're saying something from out, there's like a few seconds.
Yeah, there's always going to be a lag as well on YouTube. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So, it's not a good day, right, for technical issues. So now it's getting no signal, and if I apply that, okay, we're back I think in the room as well. Awesome. We can't see everything though. Let's try using that. Yeah, good enough? Alright, cheers. So, yeah, I've got this app component. What is it in terms of a JavaScript object? It's a function, yeah? As well, if I go to my details page, I've got a details thing. Is it a component in React speak? Yeah, it's still a component. Is it a function? No, it's a class, yeah? So we've got typically two ways of creating components in React. We have class-based components and we have function-based components. So they're using two things that are built into the JavaScript language, functions or classes, and from that we're grouping together some code that performs a particular function or returns a particular result. In terms of the details, let's show you first. In terms of the details, this would be my gallery component, just showing all of my images. In terms of the details, this would be my details component, showing, it's cutting stuff off again, isn't it? But whatever. This would be my details component, just showing the details of that particular page, yeah? And that particular movie. So there are two ways that we typically create components in React. We're going to look and do live both of those ways now, but I just wanted to show you that we can at least create two different types of components. If we look at, let's go back to details.
Just one more thing.
Yep.
You know the YouTube?
Yep. Yeah, I need to update the covers. Yeah, cool. Yeah, thanks. Alright. So we spoke as well about Jsx. What is Jsx? What does it stand for? Not extended. XML, technically, yeah. It's if you like, it's an extension to the JavaScript language, but it's using this XML template, yeah, this extensible markup language, yeah. So very, very similar to HTML. What are some of the key differences? So essentially, yeah, it lets us do our logic, our JavaScript, and our HTML all within the same file. Yeah, we used to typically keep HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all separate. Yeah, we used to divide it into the design, the logic, and the layout. Yeah, HTML would be the layout, JavaScript would be the logic or the interactivity. Yeah, the interactive side of it. Yeah, so some of the key differences between JSX and HTML this is one of them, right? We had a bit of confusion to begin with. Do we write class? Do we write class name?
Is that Jsx? I thought that was React.
So this, anytime you see a tag, yeah, in this way, inside of a JavaScript file, the only way we're able to do that is because we're using JSX. That is something that comes bundled with your Create React app. It's not part of React by default. You can use JSX in many different libraries. Yeah, you could use JSX with Vue, you could use JSX with other libraries and things like that.
When we call that HTML, and then you said technically maybe yes, so you meant this is what it means because it's not actually HTML.
No, it's not actually HTML. What this is doing under the hood, we're writing JSX, which the JavaScript engine and everything we've got set up via Create React app under the hood is converting that first to JavaScript code, and then the JavaScript code is creating the HTML to create the DOM. Yeah, but there's a lot more going on. React itself doesn't create elements directly into the DOM. First, it does it in something called, what do they use, virtual DOM or shadow DOM? Virtual DOM, I think, in the case of React. But the DOM itself is quite old. It's quite slow. Yeah, so modern libraries, they create their own smaller, more manageable version of the DOM, and this is what gets updated via the React ecosystem, and then only when necessary does your DOM get updated. Yeah, updating the DOM is a slow, painful process and can lead to a very poor user experience. So modern libraries, they create a snapshot, if you like, of this DOM, and they update that, and that will lead to a better user experience in the end. Well, that's the idea, right? That's the theory behind it. But don't worry too much, and over time these things evolve, so it's just a bit of extra information for you. How does React render the page? Does anyone know? Typically, what type of application was it responsible for building?
No.
Say again?
No.
Node. So Node's just an environment, right, that runs JavaScript. So
Single page application.
nice, yeah, single page application, says Sanjay. So in other words, typically when React first came out, it was just used to build a single page. So one of those portfolio websites that you just scroll down, that's it, it's the whole website, yeah? There's no routing, there's no navigating to other pages, everything is just there for you on one page. Like a landing page of a website, but that's it, that's the whole website, yeah? Just advertising services maybe for a small business. So React was very, very good at building these types of applications. And that structure still exists today. So we can see that in action. It's still technically a single page application, but we can just make it a multi-page application by introducing other bits and pieces, other modules, other add-ons to our dependencies. Yeah, and you'll look at that when you get to later tasks and you start introducing routing, using React Router and things like this. But how do we see that in action? Well, if anyone's done a bit of web development, 10 years ago or so, you might be aware of this public folder, which we can also see when you use Create React app. Inside of there is the index.html file. And that is actually the only page that we're rendering. Right? That is the single page part of the single page application in our React application. If we scroll down, we find the usual sort of structure of a HTML page. It has a title, it has a head section, then it has the body, right? The main part of the page. In that body, essentially all there is this one div. And that's it, right? There's this one div. That's our single page. It has an ID of root, and it's just got all the comments here of what to do. But essentially what React is doing is rendering our whole application inside of this root div. And we can see that in action again. If we go to our source, this is where we've been working. And we look at our index.js. What does this say? Render your app component into this element that has an ID of root. Yeah, so that's all been set up for us behind the scenes. React has this built-in render method, so it can render your whole application into this single HTML page. Yeah, so React is typically designed for building single-page applications, but it's grown far, far beyond that now, and we can build very, very complex projects with it still, if we so choose. Yeah? Any questions on that bit before we move on and start actually playing with some code? How do I know something's a component in React, or what sort of linting and styling do my components have? If I went back to my source, yeah, and maybe look at my gallery component. So again, it's what type? A class-based component, yeah. Well, it says class there, right? Otherwise, it would say function there.
No, but it's as a component, because usually I would think component would have that bracket close and open in front of it. But this doesn't have, it just extends.
It extends React.component, which unfortunately you can't see. You see it on YouTube, but you can't see in the room at the moment because of the resolution. But I'll sort that out for later workshops. And we'll look at something in the Kadiri platform soon, and we're going to build both a class-based component and a and a functional-based component. Yeah. But yeah, the way you tell that it's a component, typically, the standard is to name all of your components with a capital letter. Yeah. So if you notice over here, I've got my gallery component there, capital. My app component, capital. Have I got any other JavaScript files that aren't components? Probably not in this case, but if I did, that would just be a lowercase file. That's the convention, right? It helps us distinguish between components and not.
So you need to include the extend react.component.
If you're using a class-based component, yes, it needs that extends React.component line there. Notice that this is a function, but it has a capital letter. How do we normally name functions in JavaScript? What case do we use? Do we use kebab case? Do we use Pascal case? Camel case, yeah. So usually it would be a lowercase letter, and then the next word would have that uppercase, yeah. It's a component, so make sure you give it a capital letter for each component. Yeah, this can actually cause some errors, or it certainly used to cause some errors in React when it tries to build your application if you don't give each component a capital letter. If you have another function somewhere, that's fine. If you're not rendering it as a component, you can still write, you know, it in camel case like that, and it's not a problem. Inside of so this is another component here. They're returning some code, and we can render other components inside of our initial component. Yes, we can start building some nice complex logic. We can break up our code into lots of different sections, lots of different components. Can anyone spot a component inside of that highlighted code? And how do you know it's a component?
If it shows,
You were going that one?
I was in the other show, so
Do we agree or disagree with Jack? Agree? So it's got the capital letter. It's been highlighted this green color. It's been wrapped inside of what looks like a JSX tag, right? Or a HTML tag. Yeah, so if we wanted to, it doesn't make sense, right? But if we wanted to put our app component inside of there, or our details component inside of there, then we could absolutely just write it like that. These things here we're going to come on to later. These are props. It's the way that we pass information to our components. But yeah, that's just the syntax of how to include a component in another component, put it inside the tag, capital letter. The React linting or the JavaScript linting will highlight that in green. And yeah, away you go, really. So very easy to reuse our components all over our application. But you must, because it comes from somewhere else, use an import statement, the same way that we did with our images. Yeah, so we must import a component, and then we can just use it as we would any other variable, but we just make sure we wrap it in a tag to tell React that it is a component. Alright, other differences between JSX and HTML is, has anyone used events before in a normal web page? Yeah? So how do you usually write an on-click event in HTML? Say what, sorry?
In on-click, it can be two ways. Add an enlistment to relevant.
Okay, yeah, but just the word on-click. Will it be on space click, or will it be on hyphen click? What will it be?
On-click and function.
Say again? Parentheses. No. So what I'm getting at is, in HTML, it's written like that, all lowercase, all one word. In JSX, it has to be camel case. Right? There's these little subtle differences. Yeah. So all our event listeners are camel case. Pretty much everything is camel case, right? And we can't use, there's a word called for built into HTML. We can't use for. Why not? Well, it has some meaning in JavaScript, the same way class has meaning in JavaScript. So instead it's HTML for and things like this, yeah? So there are a few little subtle differences, but for the most part, unless that word is taken by JavaScript itself, then we can treat it as HTML. Yeah, that's why we use class name. Class is, well, it's this thing up here, right? It creates a class, creates a new object using a certain syntax. So that's why we have to use class name instead, to differentiate between the two. Who has had a look so far at the, oops, what's happened there? Who has had a look so far at the platform, the JavaScript training on the platform?
That render, I finished that render. Yeah.
Finished the beginner one, the render one? Yeah. So we're just going to have a look at now, and we're going to look at both function-based components, and we're going to rewrite it as a class-based component as well. Yeah, show that they can do the exact same thing, and then we'll talk a little bit about why you would use each one, things like that. Yeah. So this first question, a lot of people when they first look at this, they think, oh my god, what does all that mean? That looks really complicated. And yeah, it's not that complicated, but it's unfamiliar to a lot of people. It's written in testing syntax, yeah, so using a testing utility or a testing library or even a framework, and it's a mixture of enzyme and jest mainly on the platform. All it's saying is we've got a test, IT, initial test, yeah? We give it a description and it takes an argument, takes a function. We set a variable, right? We know these are variables, var, let, and const. Yeah, they're variables. We talked about that yesterday. And we set that equal to the rendering, the shallow rendering, if you like, of, what does that look like? We've just spoke about them. It's in green, it has a capital letter. It's a component, yeah? So we're rendering a React component and storing it inside a variable. We have to do that to test our components. This is the way we test our components in React, yeah? Or one of the ways. Then, this is the important line, I suppose, in terms of what you have to produce. We expect, when we render the welcome component, that some text is equal to this string. Yeah, so how are we going to satisfy that condition? Well, oh, I can't copy. Well, we're going to take that text and we're going to move it over here. Everyone see that all right? Is that big enough? Yeah? We can go a bit more if you want. And we're going to put it inside of our component. How did I know to put it there? Well, anywhere between two JSX tags or two HTML tags, the stuff we put inside is going to go inside a text node. It's just the way the DOM works again. Yeah. So do we need some quotation marks to tell it it's a string? No, definitely not, right? If we put those quotation marks in, those quotation marks are going to get printed to our web page. Yeah, the way HTML and JSX works is if it's inside a div, that is passed or that is converted to a string, to some text. Yeah, so that's why we're looking for the text. And hopefully it will equal that. So if I run that code, what do we think? Confetti? No confetti? Yeah? Yeah, confetti time. All good. Any elegance issues? Missing semicolon, right? There we go. Where does it go, Esteban? After the div, right? At the end of the day, this is still a return statement. It's still some JavaScript, but it does need that semicolon. Rerun it again. All good. No elegance issues this time. Oh, you can't quite see the bottom again. Sorry, it's on YouTube. I need to sort this resolution out. Right? But at least it's displaying now, whereas it wasn't earlier. Okay. So, that was a function-based component. Yeah, we've written the keyword function. Let's now convert it to a class-based component. Any ideas how I would go about that?
What if we just give it the name class?
What if we just give it the name class? Okay. And that's it, yeah?
Extends.
So firstly, do we need anything else? You think we need something else, Sonia, or?
Yes.
Yeah? I think we definitely need something else, right? So this isn't the syntax of how we write a JavaScript class. It's still the syntax of how we write a function. But it's a good start, right? We don't want a function, we want a class. What next? Someone said extends. So after welcome, what? Before the parentheses or after?
No, before the parentheses.
Before the parentheses. Extends. React dot. Is it capital C? I think it is, right? Component. Yeah? Okay, so what that's doing is it's taking an existing object that has been defined by React and creating, if you like, a child or an object that inherits all the same properties of that built-in React.component. We'll talk about inheritance a lot more later on, but it's quite an advanced topic. For now, just know that you need this syntax to create a class. Anything else that needs changing? Yes, Esteban's definitely saying yes. We have to import React. No. So the platform actually imports React for us, Esteban. So we don't need to use the import React. But usually, if you were inside of, see that first line, every single React component is going to need that line at the top. Import React from React. Yeah, so that's what Esteban is alluding to. The platform does that for us.
Is it a child component or a...
Is React a child component? What do you mean?
Then we need the constructor if it has props.
Oh, so you're coming back now to the platform, yeah? You're saying, do we need a constructor? Is that what you're asking?
No.
No?
Is it a child component or is it parent?
Well,
React,
React.component is the parent. Yeah, that's the highest level.
Okay.
Yeah?
I'm talking about welcome. Welcome is going to be the parent component.
Well, welcome is the child of React.component. It doesn't really matter at this stage whether it's a parent or a child other than that. It might have some other children, but for now it's just a child of React.component, yeah? So, do we need anything else to turn this into a class-based component? So far, we've done extends React.component and change function to class.
Render?
Render? Where does the render go?
After this.
Where the return is? What, instead of the return?
Before.
Before. Instead? Before? What do we think? Instead. So, if I did that, no.
It's a function inside the class.
So render is a method or a function, yeah? So we need to invoke render for our class, and then inside of that render, that is where we write our return. And we still want to return the same thing, right? That hasn't changed. So I'm just now going to move all that code inside. How about now? It's definitely looking better. I need to zoom in slightly more. We've got. So Kelly has suggested one more thing. She says these parentheses now are not needed. They're not needed, right? Because, well, in fact, they make it break. But they're not needed because we're not passing any inputs into our class. There's a different way to pass inputs into our class, and that's using a constructor function, which Esteban was alluding to. We don't have any props or we don't have any inputs in this case, so we actually don't need a constructor. So now that looks pretty good to me. We've even got the semicolon, which is a miracle for me to put a semicolon at the end of a statement. Yeah, should we try running that? See if it still does exactly the same. And again, confetti time, and you can't see it, but there are no elegance issues. So yeah, essentially we could use either class-based components or function-based components. What do you think simpler to write at the moment, guys? Functions, right? Functions seem to be quite a bit simpler. So historically, we needed class-based components in React because they were the only way that we could use something called state. And state is essentially just when we want to be able to change values in our application. We want to have lots of dynamic values. We want our page to store these values, update them, re-render the page. State is a way of making these properties or these variables dynamic in our application. Typically we could not, or historically we could not do that with functional based components. We had to use a class. So even though they're more complicated, we had to learn the syntax and we had to use them so that we could use state. Because trust me, you're going to need state in most of your applications. But now we have another way of doing it. Does anyone know what that other way is called? It's definitely inside of a function, but we've added something to functions in React to enable us to use state inside of a function. It's not an arrow function. No. No, don't know. Yeah, no, not a constructor. Constructor's a class-based thing. Yeah. Or you can have a constructor function, fair enough, I understand, yeah, you could maybe have that, but no, it's hooks. Anyone heard of hooks? React hooks? Yeah, exactly. You might have just heard of the term, but that's essentially what it's letting you do. It's letting you use state and various other methods that historically in React were only available to a class-based component. Now we can use these things via React hooks inside of functional-based components. So it's made our functions a lot more powerful inside React. We can essentially do everything we'd want to do with them. Yeah. So we do want to teach you both ways in the course, and some people have noticed that their app component. Was there a hand up over there or not? No. Cool. Some people have noticed in their app component that it's a function, whereas on the videos it's a class. Yeah, the videos that you're following, it's a class-based component. So this is because we made the videos a little while ago, and probably even before React hooks came out. And Create React App itself is now pushing everyone towards functional-based components, right? So that's what it gives you by default. It gives you a function as opposed to a class nowadays. The future is heading that way, using React hooks, using functions for all of your components. Yeah, that is what, if you like React is pushing, Facebook's pushing themselves, and I don't think the community objects too much. A lot of people didn't like classes too much when they came to JavaScript, because they argued that they weren't proper classes as we see in other object-oriented languages. They were just syntax sugar, really, for creating constructor functions, things like that. Yeah? So the future's definitely heading that way, using functional components and using hooks. So we're going to teach you both ways, right? Because you'll see it in a lot of code, still the class-based components, but we will teach you how to use hooks as well. Yeah? Alright. There's not too much else I wanted to talk about. Do you want to just do one more question and see if we can solve it both ways? Or any questions at the moment? Yeah? Any more questions before we solve another one? No? Yeah, go on, Kieran. Just speak up slightly, I didn't quite catch all that. Can you put the return statement in the render? No, what I meant by put it inside is I put it inside this block, yeah? So, no, you can't put it in there as an argument to the render function. What I mean is we invoke render, and then anything we put inside of the block is what actually gets rendered to the page. It's what actually gets returned from our class, or yeah. Think of it as getting rendered to the page in React. Yeah. No, render is a class thing. Yeah. But it is a JavaScript thing, right? No, it's a React thing. It's a React thing. Yeah. Jack, yeah. He doesn't know how to word this one.
Yeah, I really, especially the second one, really struggled to take it with the class bit. So what the React component is, you said you want to be a React component to create a class which is welcome.
Yeah, so the way classes work is they take an existing object, this is defined in the React library, and they essentially copy that object, and then they enable us to add extra things to that object through the use of a constructor function. I don't expect you really to understand this at this stage, but yeah. Learning intention is two types of components: functions, classes. Modern React pushing towards functions. That's enough for today, yeah? I just give you this extra information in case other people are a little bit further ahead and they are interested, but yeah? Cool. Have I broken it? No, I think it still works. Let's move on. Alright, the next question in beginner render. We have a test and we have one component. What's it called, our component? Shallow is not the component itself. Shallow renders the component, yeah. So our component is called welcome again. Here it is. Function-based, class-based? Function-based, of course, right? Obvious question. But we also create another variable and we assign that to this P is a paragraph tag inside of our component. So what this testing method is doing is finding the paragraph inside of our component and assigning it to a JavaScript variable called paragraphs. That will then let us run tests on that element inside of our component. Again, we don't fully expect you to be able to understand this test code at the moment, but it's good to start playing with it as soon as possible and trying to dissect it. It will hopefully become clear at least maybe halfway through the course, something like that. We'll get to it, right? We'll gradually work on it. And the more trainings you do on the platform, of course, the easier it's going to become. Right, then, what have we actually got to do? That was just the setup. Well, we have to have some elements, and they have to have length 2. Any ideas what that sort of cryptic sentence means? So we're finding some P's, some paragraph tags, Yeah, we need 2 paragraphs. That's what that line is saying. We need 2 paragraphs inside of our component. So at the moment it looks like we've only got 1. So I'll leave it there for now, and then we'll see the error message that we get and try and debug it. We expect paragraph at 0 to have some text, and we expect that to be welcome. Yeah? So what does that mean in better English? In more descriptive English? Yeah, so 0 in this case is the index, the same as an array would be, and we expect a string inside of our first paragraph, yeah? And that string must say welcome. We then expect our second paragraph at index 1 to have some text equal to React. Yeah? So that is what this question, this test is asking. Unfortunately, it's not asking it in straightforward English. Sometimes we give you a little bit of help, right? Please split the message into 2 separate paragraphs using the p tag, welcome, and then React. But eventually you won't even need the English text. You'll just be able to read the tests and understand what is expected of you from the tests. And that's probably all you get on Expert. I'm not entirely sure, but I have to double check that. All right. I'm just going to run this code as it is and see what feedback we get from the console. So of course it's not going to be correct. It's gone red. It tells us up here what was wrong. We expected an object to have a length of 2, but got 1. So what's that trying to say? Yeah, we've only got 1 paragraph, right? We expected 2. This first little line here has failed. That expectation of the test has failed. You can get further information just by hovering over this raw results thing. Yeah, so that exists, right? That's raw output essentially from the test. So it's even less readable than what we've given you, but if you scroll down, I'm going to zoom out, you might not be able to see it, but if you scroll down, there's quite a bit of extra information. It's a stack trace essentially, right? What the code was doing, what it said. Inside of there, you'll get your actual and expected. So we can see the actual was a number 1 and expected was 2. So it's showing us that we only got 1 paragraph and we expected 2. How are we going to fix that? Yeah, let's add another P, right?
Yeah, and run this, let's see the error.
Yeah, let's run and see the error again. I'll zoom back in for you. So at the moment we just got 2 paragraphs, but they both say welcome. Oh, now look what's happened. So expected welcome to equal to React. It's essentially, yeah, it's giving you a good hint there. Expected welcome to equal React. If you can't see that, I'll zoom in a little bit more. If I come down, this line is not red. The next expectation line is not red. Only this last line is red. So in other words, we passed those first 2 expectations. So we've almost passed the test, but our second paragraph was not equal to React. How are we going to fix that? Change the text to, oops, if I can spell, to React. Yeah, we think that's good now? Yeah?
Let's see the other one.
What do you want to see? Sorry?
I want to see the error.
You want to see the error again? So the error said expected welcome to equal to React. I wasn't trying to catch you out this time. I wasn't using...
Because so many times I've seen you miss the exclamation mark.
Yeah, you missed the exclamation mark or something. So now...
It's nothing to do with the code.
Yeah, attention to detail, Esteban. Thank you. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah, so again, that successfully passed. Yeah. So nice. Do you want to quickly rewrite it as a class? See if we can remember how to do it?
Yes.
All right. What don't we need? Tell me something we don't need. Function says don't need return. Interesting. Okay. Someone else has said we don't need the divs. Well, hold on. I'm going to take them out for now, and then We're not going to be left with anything. We're just going to have two little P tags floating around
There's one thing
doing
I'm sure
nothing.
we don't need, the brackets next to the web.
Okay, and Ahmed says we definitely don't need these brackets. He's 100% on that. How about these brackets? Should I get rid of these? I just feel like getting rid of things now. I'm just going to keep hitting delete. Alright, so do you want to delete anything else, or should we start adding some things that we do need? Okay, what do we need? Class. That keyword class goes in front of welcome. Thank you, Jack.
Extend to React component.
Yeah, extends. We need to inherit from an existing object. Yeah, extends React dot com. It is capitals, right? Yeah. Yeah. Render. Where does the render go? What? Just here, straight after? No. I'm getting told off now. You're very forceful.
We do need the return.
Oh, someone's changed their mind about the return. So we need a render. Yeah. Then what?
Brackets?
Brackets. What here? Yeah. Curly braces as well. And then inside, yeah, we need to return something. I'll wrap that in some brackets again so that we can return multiple lines. Where's the div? I don't know. You got rid of it. Sanjay said we didn't need it.
No, we don't need it.
I don't know. Did it anywhere in the test say that we needed a div? I don't think it did. Too many brackets now. Yeah, understood. So semicolon where? There? After each paragraph? I've wrapped both paragraphs in brackets, so it's just one statement now.
After the last one.
Line 6, yeah? End of line 6. If I put it inside, it's actually going to break our code. We can't have semicolons inside of a return statement that is enclosed in brackets, yeah? Because the brackets are grouping together one statement, and semicolon says end the statement. So you can't end a statement inside of a statement. It doesn't make sense, yeah? Blows up. Hey?
Can you explain why we need the parentheses after return? Because I know more or less.
Yeah, okay. So what do you want to return in this case?
Just welcome.
Just welcome. Yeah, but you want to return both, right? That's the issue. You want to return both things. And because we want to return both things, I'm not sure. Could we get away by putting it all in one line? I don't think so, but it's worth a try, right, Esteban?
But it's going to be an elegance issue.
Maybe it's an elegance issue as well. I would agree with that. For now, there's another issue that we haven't spotted, so I'm going to put it back to normal for now, and then we'll test your theory, Esteban. Is that right? Take ownership. Come on, you proposed it. Someone else now. All right.
And I told him that maybe you would explain better. Because I know that you need them, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah. Essentially, if you want to return multiple things, put them inside of brackets, normal brackets or parentheses. Yeah. So.
If it's only one, you don't need it then.
If it's only one, you don't need it. No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sanjay said we could get rid of the divs. So I'm going to run it and see what happens. So it's gone red. But why has it gone red? Let's have a look. Oops, you didn't return anything. Yeah, okay, that's a little bit confusing. Let's have a look at the raw results and... Oh no, oops, something wrong. Yeah, so here, good. We've got an error. Can you just about read that?
Must be wrapped in an enclosed in.
Yeah, have you seen that one?
So you need a div then to enclose it.
You need something to enclose it.
What is enclosed?
Does it have to be a div? No.
What else is it?
Okay, we're going to talk about what else it could be, yeah? So, previously, at level, well, at the highest level, the highest sort of level in the hierarchy, we had a div element, yeah? And then these things were lower down. They're at the next level. They were enclosed inside of our div. Yeah, so that error is relating to the fact that we had two elements, two paragraphs at the same level. They were adjacent. They were next to each other. There was no higher element containing everything within it. Yeah. So the what? Sorry. Yeah. So we've got the opening div tag here, and then we've closed the div there, and that contains two other elements itself. Yeah. But the crucial thing is at this root level, we don't have adjacent things. Yeah, now this would not work again because we have two adjacent elements. My divs are next to each other. We can't do that in a component, right? We must have just one root element. So that is our enclosing tag, or it was our enclosing tag, a div. So that, I think, will now work again. Yep. And no elegance either. But, sorry, question first, yeah?
It's okay, let's define this div with something else.
Yeah. So do we have to use a div? That's my next question. Sanjay, did you have any ideas maybe of what else to use when you said get rid of the divs?
So you can use anything within it.
How about li?
So you can use anything. It could be like section.
So Sanjay suggested section.
Or like
Okay, let's check that. Yeah, no problem, right? It doesn't have to be a div. Div's just this generic element, this generic container element. Section would of course be a bit more semantic. It's a certain section of a website. Yeah, it doesn't really matter in this case. We could use head, we could use body, we could use HTML. Obviously they've got to match, right? But yeah, we could use like the actual HTML thing. It doesn't matter at this stage, right? But the issue with using any of these named tags is that is going to get rendered to the DOM. So we only want one HTML rendered in our single page application, right? We only want one head to be rendered. We might not want lots of divs to be rendered if we've got thousands of components in our application. That's an extra 1,000 elements on the DOM, which can be quite expensive. So React has come up with a way to get around having lots and lots of enclosing divs that are essentially useless, right? They're just so that we can return one thing. We're interested in the paragraphs, not in the div. So, anyone heard of something called fragments? React fragments? No? Well, that's what they've come up with to solve this problem. This way is not that new. I don't know when they first introduced it. I'm going to show you a different shorthand syntax in a second. That is quite new. What a fragment does is it's still an enclosing tag. But when this React code gets converted into JavaScript and then gets converted into HTML, you will not see React fragment anywhere. It's invisible. It doesn't actually get rendered to the DOM. Yes, we're not creating thousands and thousands of divs that we don't need in our application. So maybe that will have a small performance increase, right? If the application's large, it might be.
But when you inspect it, what will you show up on the
Yeah, when you inspect it, you will not see React fragment. You won't see any sort of tag or element. You will only see the two paragraphs. That's it. Yeah. If you had div, you would see div and then two paragraphs, right?
Can you put it in a span?
Can we put it in a span? It's not really what span should be used for. I think it would pass the test in this case, but span is not really meant to be used as an enclosing tag, right? Only for very small parts of code rather than a whole return statement, yeah? There's a modern way to write that as well. Rather than typing React fragment, a bit tedious, just put nothing. Empty opening tag, empty closing tag. Ooh. Sexy, yeah? This is way easier, right? So that's quite a modern way to write it, and that will do exactly the same
So
thing.
see this, it means grab the fragment.
That is shorthand for React fragment, exactly. And the React fragment is there so that we can wrap our intended elements without creating lots of extra divs or useless containers.
So just to be sure,
Yep.
when it has a div, the div gets rendered or not?
Yes, yeah.
That's when it's a fragment.
I'll show you on the next React workshop. I'll show you the difference, yeah, but it's too much now for me to set it up. You'll just be waiting while I set things up. But I'll show you on the React workshop tomorrow the difference between rendering with a div and rendering with a React fragment, yeah? But yeah, there will be nothing there. There will be no React fragment rendered. It will just be the 2 paragraphs. Yeah. I want to leave it there really, unless there's any other questions, because I'm sure we've gone way over again, right? One of these days we'll stick to half an hour or 40 minutes, but hopefully there have been some useful tips in there for everyone. Yeah. All good? Any questions? No? Thank you. Fantastic.